I loved this conversation with Jess Bubbico. Jess Bubbico is the creator of Love Your Woo. She's also the host of the podcast, Love Your Woo podcast. And this was the first time Jess and I had a conversation, and it was fantastic. We talked a lot about the messy middle and what it means to surrender into the messy middle. And then Jess does a fabulous job talking about human design and how we can use our human design when we're in the messy middle to make decisions when it just feels not so great. So it's a really uplifting conversation, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed talking with Jess. So welcome to the show, Jess.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to be here with you.
Yeah, I've started listening to your podcast, and
Awesome.
Love Your Woo. I love woo. So it's really good. So I'm excited to have you on this show so that we can talk more about woo and soul and human design and all kinds of things. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, but I thought it might be helpful to get us started by talking. How did you get into woo, and a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for having me here. I'm excited to have this conversation today and to kind of see where it takes us. How did I get started in the woo? So I guess my journey, when I was younger in my, high school, I was like very achievement oriented. I had to get the good grades. I had to, I was pretty hard on myself. I would say I was definitely a perfectionist. And, I had these experiences where, I had to get straight A's. I had to I had to make sure my body looked a certain way. I had to make sure that, I was just very hard on myself. And at the same time, I would have these experiences with energy and intuition. And specifically for me, it all actually started around my grandmother had passed away, and I have the same birthday as my mom and my grandma. And so we're all born March 22nd, which is pretty crazy.
March 24th here.
Are you? I love it. Fellow Aries. So good.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So you all had the same birthday, and then she passed away. Your grandmother
passed. And I would talk to her in my mind when I was sleeping. So I would call it praying, and I would lay in my bed and I would be like, I don't know if you can hear this or not, but I'm going to share my thoughts of the day. And this one night I could feel her sitting on my bed next to me, rubbing my back. And I was like, okay, I'm nuts. I was like 16 or 17. And my mom had said she wanted to have a dream about my grandma. So I said, Mom wants to have a dream about you. Go visit her in her dreams. If you're really here sitting on my bed, please go do this. And so the next morning I woke up and my mom said, Jess, I had a crazy dream. I was looking through a keyhole into your bedroom and I saw grandma sitting on your bed. And I was like, well, that's crazy because she was sitting on my bed and I told her to come visit you in her dream. So this must really be something. And so from I want to say a younger age, there had been many other things in addition to that, but it's like I had my achiever side, but then I had a door open into this other reality, this other, reality really, where I was like, there's something with energy. And so I went to school, graduated, became a speech therapist. And around that same time, I really started having a spiritual awakening. And so for me, I kept going down the path. I kept learning more. I kept studying with different people and really started to realize like everybody has access to this. I was helping clients heal, using speech therapy. I was working on a stroke unit and all of that. And we're using these protocols, which are like, okay, cognition, we check it like this. And, if somebody can't speak because they had a stroke, here's how we help their muscles. But there was this other component of healing, which was the mental, emotional, spiritual healing that was just as important, but wasn't being addressed through the lens of traditional speech therapy. At least I didn't think it was. And I also worked with kids as well. So really my journey came from me feeling like I wasn't able to provide enough for many of my clients on a deeper level.
Right.
And then wanting to explore, I wanted to explore. I don't understand. We're feeding these people in the hospital, Coke and cheese. And a ham sandwich on white bread. And why are we this is not healing. This doesn't make sense to me. So,
right.
Yeah, that's really where my journey sort of, I guess, began.
Yeah. Interesting. So I love the story of your grandmother visiting you and kind of opening that door. And I can see this makes a lot of sense to me, looking at what you offer now through Love Your Woo and your workshops and retreats, and how you blend both kind of the real practical, grounded, this is how you can get into your intuition, but also really loving. So I love the word weird. It's one of my favorite words. So I love that you use, like, your weird can be your wisdom, like using our weird as our wisdom. So that's making a lot of sense, your path. And I have a similar, we do whatever work we do. And I was in a hospital setting, a psychiatric hospital setting early on. And I was like, this isn't even therapeutic. Like this is, so coming from a more holistic approach, what are we feeding these people? Like, how are we even doing this? And what about, the energy? Everything is energy. So so that's Absolutely. A beautiful way of coming to the woo.
Yeah.
Helping people with the woo.
I feel like so many of us were called towards these professions to be able to see where the gaps and the holes were, because, I even have friends now who were like physician's assistants who woke up and started doing, healing and like healing modalities, and now are actually starting to go back into where they were before through a completely different lens, to be able to bring a different level of healing, even if it's maybe not in the protocol. But yeah, I think it's kind of interesting to see how many of us kind of went into that situation and we're like, this is not therapeutic. This is not healing. And then, pursued our other paths. And it'll be very interesting to see how we all weave back into perhaps a new model that's being created.
Right. Because we know everything is sort of disintegrating for new. I can feel it. I'm sure you can feel it. And it feels like it's been coming for a while, but it feels like it's at a head now, where there's just a lot of change.
A lot of change and a lot of disintegration happening for sure.
Yeah. Which is, I heard you talking with Patrick Murphy about the messy middle. And I thought we might talk a little bit. There's so many things I wanted to talk to you about, because you have so many things that resonate with me that I'm like, oh yeah, and that. But I thought the messy middle, because it feels like I know the messy middle really intimately. And it sounds like you know the messy middle pretty well. And I'm curious about your thoughts about the messy middle and what that means, and kind of where we all are listening to our intuition in that messy middle. Like, how do you trust when it's so messy in this, when the new hasn't happened, but the old is disintegrating, this place of
totally
yuck?
Well, I'll tell you this. I am in the messy middle in this moment.
Yeah.
I have had, since the eclipse hit, a couple of really unexpected, challenging things happen. And so the messy middle is that point where, you don't exactly know where you're going. And maybe things feel like they're breaking down a little bit. Maybe you thought you were headed in one direction and suddenly you're not. And you're kind of in this space, like you're in that void, like, what's going on? Why am I here? Or you want something, you start to move towards it, and then you start to realize all of this gunk is coming up from inside of you, oh, it's my dream to have a podcast, or it's my dream to do this or that or the other thing. But suddenly in the pursuit of that, all of this stuff is rising from underneath the surface, and I don't really know where to go or what to do with it, or how to, how to process it. How does it fit into the journey? Or again, like, not really knowing where you're going to go, being in that void. It's almost like, I think about the caterpillar when it goes into the cocoon, it actually turns completely into mush before it becomes a butterfly.
Yeah.
And so it's like that messy middle is that space where you really, truly have to surrender, because no amount of doing is going to, I don't want to say fix it, but right. That's where the mind goes. Oh, it's messy. It's not supposed to be messy. What do we do when the room is messy? We clean it,
Right. Right.
And it's like, sometimes you can't. Sometimes the only thing that you can do in the moment is surrender to the messiness and allow yourself to feel and experience everything that's happening inside of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lot of images coming to mind, right? So I love the butterfly, and the caterpillar has to liquefy and actually, I think, digest itself. It uses those nutrients to become the butterfly when it's all liquefied in there. And so if we think about that, you're kind of digesting yourself, all of the stuff that's coming up, like I'm guessing fear. What else is coming up?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, it can be so many things. So like, I'll share with you, for me, I, just again, like some catastrophic events and passing of a friend unexpectedly, like my aunt got really ended up having a stroke. Just a lot of unexpected things that happened within a week's time that for me rattled my heart space in a really deep way.
Yeah.
And because they were unexpected and kind of catapulted me into the messy middle. And for me, it's actually been, what do those things do? They put you in your heart, right? You have to feel. Right. And so for me, a lot of what's come up has actually been grief. Like, and it's not just grief because, a family member is going through a hard time, or, dealing with a friend group going through a mourning process and all of that. There's so much more that it's like, oh shit, I'm here now. I hope it's okay is it okay that I just swore?
Sure.
Okay. Can't erase it now. But good. It's like, I'm dropped in here so much in this moment that now I can see things in this heart space that I didn't know were there before. Because before I was living up here and I was doing the laundry and running my business and doing all the things. But being in the heart, suddenly it's like, oh man, not only is there grief around these two things, there's grief around a lot of things that maybe I didn't process or I didn't work with before. And so I think that messy middle space is, I got to clean out the closet, or I have to be with what's in the closet, because ultimately these events, we all know that from our pain and from challenging experiences comes growth and transformation. So being in that space, never know. It could be an emotion. It could be grief. It could be deep sadness. It could be deep anger that you didn't deal with. It could be anything in that middle space that perhaps because of our busy Western lifestyles, we've allowed ourselves to avoid even noticing is there. So that's, to me, it's like, it's different for everybody, but equally profound.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find that in the messy middle, because really, when you said that, I was like, I think I'm in the messy middle again too. I mean, am I ever out of it? I'm not even sure. Like, I keep recycling because there's some stuff going on, but I do feel like that surrender to that place, that heart. And often people misinterpret surrender is not collapse into all of it, but it is that place of feeling all of the stuff. And for me, what has come up in the past 2-3 years is more addiction. Like, I'm realizing my own addictions and having to, so it's not even, there's some emotions and grief and things that come up with that, but it's actually a thing that I have to deal with. This, what is recovery? What does recovery look like? And that I continue to find myself in the messy middle around there again and again. And so surrender, do you have anything else to say about surrender that you think would be helpful for people?
Yeah. I mean, I agree regarding just even thinking about surrender. We hear that word so often, right? Just surrender. Well, what does surrender actually even mean?
Right.
And I think that's going to be different depending upon who's in that space and who's in that situation. So for example, if you're in a space where you're going like, okay, addiction is something that I struggle with, surrender for you might just be acknowledging that that is there and that is actually an experience that you're having. Whereas, for me, surrender, the way that I surrender really I can live in my head. Like I said, as a young child, I was like, okay, perfectionism, I'm going to just make things happen, and I'm going to, live up here and get the good grades and but I'm not going to feel anything. So for me, often it's like allowing myself to feel the things I'm feeling, but also not letting myself drown in them. Right. So for me, I can feel this grief. If I don't counterbalance it with connection,
right,
then I can drown. How do I want to process this in a healthy way for myself so I'm not consumed by it, but I'm moving through it? For somebody else, let's say, for example, I had a friend who was sharing around something he was going through, and he's like, I finally just admitted that I'm feeling depressed. And then in that moment, the acknowledgement of that, he was like, oh, okay, I know what that is now. Right. And now I know what to do. So for him, he had been resisting it, but once he just acknowledged it, he could move through it in a different way. So surrender isn't, necessarily just this free fall. It can be an active state. To me, the surrender is allowing yourself to acknowledge the thing that you actually need, that maybe you've been resisting, and realizing that there's actually going to be there too, something to catch you when you fall in that space of the unknown of what you haven't been letting yourself see or experience.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it does to me, because I think that makes perfect sense to me. That, sometimes it's just letting the cat out of the bag. Suddenly you feel a little bit lighter. Just totally. That can be enough of a surrender, or maybe there's some action that's required, and I do like the idea of counterbalancing, so that you don't drown. I think a lot of people feel like if I start, I won't stop. If I let the grief come up and out, I'll be swallowed by the grief or the anger or whatever the sadness is. And I think, there is some counterbalance there. Connection is a counterbalance. Joy, absolutely. Finding some joy in the bitterness or in the brutality has sometimes totally. Yeah.
I know for me personally, like as I've been having these experiences, I try to allow myself to vacillate between joy and grief, because it allows us to, again, not feel like we're stuck. And so for me, I knew this weekend, I was like, okay, I need time to relax. I need time to process. So I give myself space to cry, but then I also give myself space to, I met up with some friends, or, I booked a therapy appointment, or, these different things that I know that I can do that serve as that sort of solid rock, because the truth is we don't have to process it all at one time. No, we don't have to cannonball in. We can go for a swim and then dry off and have a piece of watermelon, and then go back in for a swim and, do something to take care of ourselves on the other side. So yeah, I'm curious for you, what surrender, how surrender resonates for you, or what comes up for you there.
Yeah, no, I love what you're talking about, and that it could be just an acknowledgement, or it could be, whatever you need. But the resistance is interesting. Like I was like, yeah, where we find ourselves resisting. And I was thinking about real practical, like you have very practical grounding kinds of things to do, like make a therapy appointment, visit some friends. I love the visual too of take a swim, come out, get some watermelon, like have a break. I also like the visual of surrendering to the waves. You get to decide how far you want to go in. If you think about the beach, and if you just want to dip your toe in or take a walk along the shore, or do you want to go in and swim a little bit more? But also those waves, every wave that comes, so like every emotion that comes, it leaves the sand a little bit different, but it also goes back out. And so
totally,
right, to surrender, it doesn't mean that you're locked in a swirl it ebbs and flows, right?
Totally. There's I was thinking as you were talking about the fact that if we're going to go out into really deep water, we're not going to go out into deep water without a life raft or, a life jacket on.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or somebody there to spot us or whatever it may be. And so I think there's real importance in that of, really first off, defining for yourself, what does surrender actually mean for me?
Right.
Because, for somebody who's been doing this type of work for a long time, who has gone into the depths of themselves and has learned that they're okay because they've developed that trust with themselves, that surrender is going to look very different for them versus somebody who's maybe in a marriage where they're very unhappy, yet they have 4 kids and everybody drives expensive cars. And on the surface, it looks like the most beautiful, perfect life, but they're miserable on the inside. That's going to be a very different process of surrender, especially if the fear in and of itself is just acknowledging that it's okay to not be happy, even though you accomplished the dream. So I think that really understanding and maybe even taking a pause, if you're listening to the podcast, is like, what does surrender actually mean to me? What is my first piece of surrender? In this, it might lead me to go into the messy middle, to even just acknowledge whatever the challenge is. It might lead me to a place of having to become the goo that has to eat itself to become the butterfly. And that's okay, because eventually I will become the butterfly. So again, I think there's a word, and I don't know if you know this word. I think it's titration. Do you know that word? Okay. And is that I think that's like going between like sensations of challenge and ease. I'm not totally sure. I've heard people say it.
Well,
where it's like we expose ourselves just a little bit. And then yeah.
And I love the idea of, what do you need? Like, if you're going to go on an excavation or a deep dive. So I think about, the movie Titanic, where the old lady says in the movie Titanic, she says, a woman's heart is a deep ocean. And I thought that was a lovely, all people, not probably, but when you're going to the depths of your heart to do some work around that, or to see what's there, or because life is forcing you to, because people are dying. And I did want to say that I'm sorry that you've had all of these challenges, and yet I know that your life is perfectly in line with what you need. And that's the hard stuff, right? But when you're going to go to the depths of the heart, we don't go on a deep dive, excavation type dive without equipment.
Yes.
And without a buddy. Like, if you ever been a scuba diver, you don't go without a buddy. And so to think about, what equipment do I need? How much do I want to go in? And in my mind, you can't have surrender without trust. So we got to build the trust in yourself, mostly in yourself, but also probably in the world. If you're gonna go there, then yeah.
An image that was coming to my mind was like kind of the contrast between like an archaeological dig versus going out and scuba diving.
Right.
And I think some people, again, like, I know anybody could be listening to this podcast at any stage of their journey.
Yeah.
Some people are going out on an archaeological dig and all they have is scuba gear in their garage, and that can look like, you're ready to make changes in your life in a certain way, but everybody in your life is not going to approve of those changes that you want to make, or they're not going to be in alignment with it, or they're going to be very upset with you. And so it's like, that's your scuba gear, right? But that gear isn't going to support you with where you're going. And so it's maybe acknowledging that the first step is just a small step of, let me just start listening to new podcasts that open and expand my mind in a new way. Or maybe for me, I need to just start looking at groups on Facebook where I feel more seen and recognized and more aligned, or whatever it may be. Like, whatever level of support you need, you don't have to, if you've never been to a therapist and that just makes you so uncomfortable, maybe that's not your first step.
Right.
Maybe your first step is something completely different, and that's okay. And that's where I think the self-awareness comes in. It goes, What's the next step that feels safe enough in my body where I feel like I can allow myself to take that step without completely shocking my nervous system, where I'm like so anxious. So again, like we'll use the example of the family of, 4 kids,
Yeah.
it might be scary for that person to acknowledge they need to go to therapy, but they might have a friend who's left their life that looked that similar way that actually doesn't induce a ton of anxiety to it. Maybe they're a little nervous, but it doesn't put them into full spectrum panic thinking about taking that step. So again, I think you have to really just meet yourself where you are when you're in that space and again, know what your next step is.
And it's hard, I think, to know what the next step is when it's messy. And I just need to say sometimes that it's just not clear till it's clear. And one of the things I do is don't move until I don't just be still until I get some kind of clarity. And yet at the same time, if I make any step, it doesn't really matter if it's the right step or the wrong step, any step, the path will rise to meet me. The path rises to meet us. If you're not going to miss your life, it's going to keep showing up for you. So
totally. I wish I had asked you this before this podcast, but do you know your human design?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I love human design. So I'm a generator 6-2.
Okay. And my guess was that you were a generator. Are you emotional authority?
What's the other one? Sacral?
Yeah.
I'm sacral authority.
Okay. Do you want to go into a little bit of human design? Shall we riff?
I would love to, because I think it's really helpful for people to find in the mess, like what helps me have clarity, and like knowing my human design has been very helpful for me.
Totally.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what human design is, because I actually think it's an amazing blueprint and tool for being in that messy space. So
perfect. Yeah.
Human design is a system that brings together the Chinese I Ching. It brings together the chakra system, the Kabbalah. It brings in quantum physics. It brings astrology. So it brings together multiple systems. And what it does is it gives you a blueprint for your energy to understand how your energy operates. And in this, it also shows you how you're designed to make decisions. And so, for those who are familiar with astrology, we can look at the 12 archetypes of each astrological sign. So for example, we're Aries. So we know there's going to be a little bit of fire with Aries. They kind of are independent. They like to go first. We come into Taurus. We know there's a big association with beauty. It's an earth sign. Each one is a little bit different. And we can look to those archetypes and say, yeah, I can see my fire. Like I see where I'm fiery, or yeah, I can, you know what? I do like to go a little bit more slowly, and I do love beauty. And human design is the same way. Instead of 12 archetypes, we have 5 archetypes. And within each of these 5 archetypes, they're going to interact with the world differently. So for example, you heard Kelli say you're a 6-2 sacral generator. I'm a 4-6 emotional manifester. And so we operate different. We are going to operate differently. And I'll go through a little bit of what this means. But when we talk, human design brings out, okay, how do we make decisions? And you'll see this on your chart. If you go check it out, you can go to like jovianarchive.com and get your chart. You can go to myhumandesign.com and get your chart. There's multiple different websites. But when we look to our authority, it's going to tell us how we make decisions. So Kelli, you're a sacral being, which means that your gut, and you literally just did it in this moment. You either get the and your head shakes, or I see with sacrals often, it's like, like, something's not resonating here. So there are gut decision makers, right? And this typically responds to a yes or no question. So do you want to go to lunch with me today? Or, are you ready to call a therapist, or whatever it is? It's that allowing yourself to tune into your gut. Does it give you a sort of, do you find yourself leaning in, or do you get an, or do you get sort of this, it doesn't feel like the right time yet. I'm not
Right.
I'm not really getting a yes or a no, getting a kind of maybe in this moment.
Yeah. I call that neutral. So before I knew human design, I could feel like there isn't a yes or a no. That means it's a no for now.
Yeah.
I mean, right. The sacral.
Totally.
Right.
Yes. And I think that's so important for people with sacral, because typically people teach it like it's either a yes or a no. And I think for a lot of sacral people, sacral decision makers, it's like, maybe not right now. It's not a yes, it's not a no. But either way, if it doesn't give you an it's probably likely not meant for you in the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Emotional decision makers need to sleep on things. I am an emotional decision maker. And I have learned, I'm looking at purchasing a new car. I went to the car dealership. I've been like 3 times, which is just not kosher for a car dealership. They want you to come in and test drive it. And yesterday, the one I had wanted to purchase obviously had been sold by the time I got there, but I wanted to keep test driving that type of car to make sure it felt right over time. And the guy came in at the end. I told the one guy who was younger, who I was working with, I was like, I'm not going to purchase this car today. And then his elder came in and was like, Jess, he came back, and like the guy standing behind him, he's like, Jess, this car is likely not going to be here. And if this is, I said, I'm going to just stop you right there.
Right.
With all due respect, I'm not purchasing this car today, but thank you for your kindness and your concern in this moment. Right. But that's the difference, where it's like the sacral might get the no, this is a no right now, or this is today, now is the time. Whereas the emotional authority needs to kind of feel it out over time.
Right.
There's multiple different types of authority we could go into, which would probably take us a long time. But, when you're in that messy middle space, to learn and understand the different ways we each make decisions. If I said to you, well, you should really feel through it, you might be like, well, no, this is a yes right now, and I know it, or I know that it's a no, I don't need to sleep on it.
Right.
So human design can really be supportive to honor our own unique process when there's a lot of information out.
Noise. I was going to say noise from the peanut gallery. Everybody's got an opinion about what we should do. And yes. And
it puts us back in the driver's seat. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I've been learning a lot about human design, and I'm trying to overlap it now with the work I do in nutrition.
Amazing.
Because I kept saying, and actually you had a post last week that really resonated with me about doubting yourself, like for years of doubt. But it's because I believe that everybody has a different way. There's no one path. So for nutrition, it doesn't matter what it is, but talking about nutrition, I haven't found one, this is the way everybody needs to eat, and these are the foods everybody needs to eat. There are certain things that seem to be helpful for most people, but like when you eat, like generators need energy because they're Energizer bunnies, and manifestors may need to eat differently, and projectors may need to eat when they feel like it. I mean, it's just everybody, it's just all different. And so I'm really excited about the overlay of human design.
Have you dove into the primary health systems in human design yet?
Not yet. No.
Okay. I have a lot of thoughts on like nutrition, like experiments I want to run, and I'm starting to work on it for myself. But it's like, in the human design body graph on the left side, if anybody pulls their chart, there's a bunch of red numbers that all mean something different. And the idea is that when you live in alignment with those numbers, you actually stabilize the body. And so it would be very interesting to look at, from a physical perspective, what are we putting in our body? But then from a spiritual, energetic, mental, emotional perspective, am I actually in alignment with me?
Right. Right. And I think alignment with me is the key, is what I'm all about, And so, and I forgot to even ask you, what do you think of the soul? Like, where is the soul? What is it? And Is that what we're aligning with? Is it something else we're trying to align with?
That's such a good question. I wish I could give you an answer that's like, this is exactly what it is. And like, I know it, but I think we don't. It's kind of like you can ask a fish in a pond what a human is, but it only has a 2-dimensional experience. And it's like, well, it's this thing that,
hangs over
hooks
the water.
my mouth on a line and lives above the water, and I can feel it, but I can't always see it because I can't see up. It's like, I don't actually really even know what the soul is, but what I can say is, I think of like a car and an alignment check in a car. And it's like, if something's off with the alignment check, you're going to be driving in a strange way.
Yeah.
And what I've really, exactly, God, it's reminding me when I was younger, I don't know what I did to my car, but I must've I was a reckless Aries driver as a young adult. And my sister got in my car and she's like, Jess, your steering wheel is like literally off. And I'm like, she's like, how long have you been driving with this? I'm like, I didn't even notice it. But great metaphor for life, right?
Right.
Well, I've just been tolerating this pain, or I've just been tolerating this acne or this whatever. And it's not a big deal because it's a part of my existence, when really, that's not what the body wants to be feeling or experiencing.
Right.
So for me, it's like, I feel like we can use human design to align our energy, the archetypes from it to align our energy. So it's like whatever the soul is fits into the body with greater ease without pain or whatever it may be.
Yeah. And I think, sometimes it's really helpful to get into the body and to see where there is misalignment or dis-ease, right? And that can be really helpful for people. And then I also think other people go about it in a different way. And then that's okay too. But for me, I didn't want to be wrong. So all of my career, my career started in clinical mental health, and I spent, most of my career there. And I just didn't want to be wrong. I didn't want to, do no harm, basically, when we become practitioners of any kind. You don't want to hurt people. But yet you also see where there's so much opportunity for people where they literally have no idea that they're driving. They're driving their body that's misaligned and have no idea that that's not how they have to live.
Totally. Right? Well, I think we live in a culture also that goes like, you turn on the TV and you see people on prescription ads where we've just normalized that you're going to get older. I remember my first day of work, I called my dad and I was like, no, there's no way I can do this. I cannot work a 9-to-5 job. I don't know what this whole thing is. I suffered through grad school. I really didn't, it was challenging for me in a lot of ways because I questioned it a lot. I was like, is this what I want to do? Is it not what I want to do? Mm-hmm. And I'm always careful because I'm like, I don't know, I might want to be a speech therapist again one day. I don't know this chapter. It's a no, but 3 chapters from now could totally be a yes. But, and I just remember this sort of idea where people would just kind of laugh, or my dad kind of laughed and it's like, this is adult life. This is what life is. And you're just like, I'm supposed to suffer every day for the rest of my life doing something that doesn't feel good for my heart and my soul. That sucks, but we've normalized it. So people go, well, I should just take on, I should just accept it, versus now I'm like, I love what I do. I wake up excited. I don't even feel like I'm
doing anything. I know. I would do this for free. I heard this on one of your podcasts. It's that's the thing you should be charging for.
Exactly.
Right. But what came to mind, so I spent a long time working on this post that I posted this morning about, so one of my sons, they're all turning 17. It's cute. So everybody's birthdays. And for one of his friends' birthdays, it must have been a former teacher, I think, posted on his Facebook page, to remember that the extra mile is never crowded. And I kind of liked it because I was like, oh, that's right. The extra mile is never crowded. And as a mom of 2 boys, I'm like, that's right, boys, get after it. Come on. And then I'm like, wait, what are we saying? kind of like what you're saying, like I'm supposed to wake up and go be miserable every single day because that's adulting. Screw that. No. Totally. And then I started thinking about it in terms of human design, right? And I'm like, well, the extra mile is nothing for a generator that's lit up, you know, or for a projector that feels invited in and feels like they're really, and for one of I have 2 sun projectors, and I was like, he's not going to want to go where it's not crowded, because why would you want to go where it's not crowded? Because he likes the crowd. Yeah. So I just started thinking about like these norms and these things that we say, go get it. Go get the extra mile, but not if you're going to burn out and be miserable. Like that's
totally
right.
I feel like I should give a little cap of kind of the 5 different types for those who don't know, because I'm totally like resonating with you, and I'm sitting here going 1,000,000%.
And they're going to be people that are like, what's a projector?
What does that mean?
Right. Yeah.
I'm a manifester, which is also another like quote non-energy type, or it doesn't function like a generator. And I was in grad school. I was teaching a bunch of fitness classes. I was going into the city all of the time to go meet my friends, doing all this stuff. And about every 5-6 weeks, I would get sick because I was not operating the way I should have.
Right. Your body is trying to tell you, or your soul is trying to speak through your body, or whatever that is.
Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. And it's like, but because we're supposed to be determined human beings, I just have to push through it. And then I'm going to blame myself because now I'm sick. So now I'm going to feel guilty because clearly I didn't take enough supplements or do this or do that. And then I'm going to push myself harder at the gym because I got sick. So clearly my immune system versus girl,
rest,
pump the brakes,
right,
and rest. That's not how it's supposed to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So let's talk about the 5 types really quick.
We got manifestors,
generators,
manifesting
generators, projectors, and reflectors.
Yeah.
So manifestors are, I like to think of them energetically. So each one of these are going to energetically function differently and therefore sort of play a different role in whatever organization they're in, even if it's their own family organization.
Right.
Manifestors, I think of like the quarterback. They tend to get things started. They have an urge that comes through them, a creative urge of some kind, and they're here to go do that thing. Now, there's nuance here because if you're emotional authority versus splenic, is going to be your speed at which you initiate that thing is going to be different. So let's say, for example, the way it functions for me in business is I'm hanging out and I have this urge that comes through me to write a post, or an urge that comes through me to start a program, or an urge that comes through me to reach out to a certain person. I'm designed to pay attention and like do it. And they'll seemingly kind of come out of nowhere. And those urges are going to kind of kick the ball and get the new play started. I might carry that out. Like I might be the one who does that thing. So for example, usually I'll get the urge to create something and I'll create the post and put it out there. But sometimes I'll get the urge and I'm like, okay, Brandy, my virtual assistant, can you create all this stuff for me? And she goes and she does it. She's a manifesting generator. So manifestors, very urge oriented, make things happen. Don't always go to the finish line with whatever urge is coming through them. They might hand it off to somebody else.
Right.
Generators are here to be lit up. They're here to follow what lights them up.
Right.
So I don't know what this feels like, but maybe you can share with us. But everybody goes, just do it, hustle, make things happen.
Right.
That doesn't really work for the generator. So for example, I'm on this podcast because you saw me speaking with Patrick Murphy. It lit you up. You responded in your body and you reached out to Patrick and I, right?
Right.
Very different than I need somebody who does human design. And I just have this urge to go look up human design people and reach out to this person because I feel like they're the right person.
Right. No, the responding.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to say as a generator, like I spent most of my life doing what I was told to do, which is hustle. Like what we're all told, go the extra mile. which as a generator, I have the energy to do that, but I was miserable. So yes, I'm achieving. Yes, I'm going places. I'm getting degrees and stuff, but it is not filling my heart. I am like still waiting for my calling. Like it just felt really. And so now I really pay attention to, I've always had it. I always knew that gut feeling because I'm a sacral. So what lights me up, but now I'm learning to wait to actually ask, is this lighting me up? Or is this draining to me? And it's very, very difficult for me to not get things started, like to realize I'm a responder. I'm supposed to kind of respond to what's happening.
Yeah.
But yes, that's what it feels like. I see something I like and I'm like, well, I like that. And I respond. Yeah.
I want to bring in a little caveat to this because I was talking to a client about this the other day, because I find with a lot of generators, obviously I haven't seen your chart, so there's a lot to break down. And I just want to put that in there. Just like astrology, you could be an Aries sun, but my moon's in Libra and my rising sign's in Aquarius, which makes everything different. In yours, you could be Virgo, and that's like a very grounded earth energy, so it's going to be different for everyone. But what I find with generators is it's not just like you sit around and you just wait for things to happen. You know what you love and you know what you want for yourself. So if you know that you want to create a podcast, you don't just sit around and wait for somebody to ask you to create a podcast. You hold that intention and you go, I'm ready to start a podcast. And then you go, okay, well, am I lit up by maybe you walk into the bedroom and there's laundry everywhere and something lights up inside of you that you want to do your podcast right now. You want to record your first episode by something that just inspired you from the laundry. And it could be something completely not even related to the laundry, but the laundry did something to you and you now need to go talk about it.
Right.
So it's not like just sit and respond and wait for things to come to you. It's actually a very active process of being in your intention, being in your desires, being in what you love, and allowing the environment around you to inspire you and light you up and activate you so that you can make that dream come out into the reality.
Yeah. Good distinction. Yeah. Yeah. And manifesting generators,
I find they're a combination. They're a true combination of a manifester and a generator. So I find many of my manifesting generators get lit up and excited where they have, or I should say, they get the urge. Something comes through them. They're like, okay, I want to start talking about, I have a client who loves Italy. She wants to start doing stuff with Italy and putting it out there. So her thing is like, she'll get the urge of like, I want to start hosting retreats in Italy. She'll start kind of putting it out there to people and seeing who responds. So for her, it's this pure combination of, okay, I'm really lit up. This urge is coming through me, but instead of just following the urge and trying to make it happen, I'm going to take the urge, I'm going to express it. And now I'm going to see what shows up to respond to. So if she starts telling her friends, I'm ready to start hosting retreats in Italy, she's going to see what people are saying in response to that. And then she might create her retreat based upon some of what lights her up that she hears people say. So if somebody says, I want to do a gelato tour, and the other one says, I want to go see the sacred churches of Italy, she's like, the gelato one lights me up. Let's go do that. So it's a pure combo.
Okay.
Generators and manifesting generators, when they're lit up, tend to have a lot of energy, and they are the go, 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 go kind of energy when they're lit up. Projectors are here to be invited. And so when we look at projectors, the question is, it's the idea that you want to pay attention to the people that recognize you for who you are. You want to pay attention to where you feel invited to share your gifts and your expertise. It's very important for projectors to be taking care of themselves, to honor themselves, to see their inherent worth, and to allow themselves to be seen in their gifts. So for example, a projector who, like, if I could use the example perhaps of a son, one of your sons, if you have a high schooler, it's like, maybe he's the star of the football team, or maybe he's really great at sports, allowing himself to do that, to take care of himself, to be seen as that. And then notice, what are the friend groups that invite him in, or the colleges that invite him in, or the soccer teams that invite him in, as opposed to like, you should just fight to the top and get to the best one. It's like, no, where does the energy fit? Where is there an energetic recognition of your gifts,
Right.
So
yeah.
And I find when projectors are actually very lit up, and it or when they're recognized and it feels good, I should say,
right,
they actually kind of have the energy of a generator, where they can
keep,
yes.
Okay.
But it can't be that first. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it can't just be like, just take yourself the extra mile. It's like, they're lit up, they're excited, their energy is gonna
they'll go the
further.
extra mile when they seen and heard and recognized for their gifts and welcomed in. Okay. Yeah.
And it's not a push. It's just they're naturally expressing who they are, and it feels good to share more of themselves.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And I find a lot of projectors in the shadow tend to want to focus on the people who don't recognize them. Like, if there's any worthiness wounds, it's like, but why aren't they seeing me? It's like, no, just who sees you? Go towards them, because that's where your energy is going to be the best spent.
Yes, I can see that a lot with my oldest son.
Yes. Right. Like, don't go there.
Don't go there. Yeah.
Don't go there.
And
then reflectors, they're 1% of the population. They're sort of our shiny unicorns. And they are, they need to feel into things over time. So it's very important. Reflectors need to be putting themselves into environments that feel good for them.
Yes.
I actually live with a reflector currently, and it's very interesting to watch his process, because he needs to really feel into stuff over time and make sure it feels good to make a decision to do it. So it's like, reflectors are not here to rush. They're not here to respond to the environment. They're not here to follow an urge. They're here to actually surround themselves with people that feel good, in environments that feel good, and to just make sure that over time, the things that they want to get involved with consistently feel good.
Right.
Just because Monday it feels great, and then Tuesday you have some questions about it, and then Wednesday it's starting to feel good again. It's more of the sum of that experience, as opposed to like, it has to feel good every single day or it's not right. It's
right.
We're all emoting, feeling beings, so what feels good over time.
Got it. Yeah. I love that. And people can work with you individually. You also do workshops and retreats. So I want to make sure that loveyourwoo.com, we will make sure that people can connect with you, because I just think it's so helpful. And I love your energy, and I love the way that you could help people, let's say, really individually dig deep into their chart, and so that it's just not a struggle. Because I understand that we have places that are at war in our world, and I understand that there are times and places, right, where it's like, I don't really care. I'm in survival mode. We have people trying to survive in this country too, and I get that. So there's a time and a place, but it doesn't have to be such a struggle. Right? To feel aligned, to get the alignment right. And so the car metaphor, you're someone kind of like a mechanic that can help people get in alignment there.
Yeah.
Feel better.
I'm the person that's going to help you go through the car and go, okay, like, press this button, the window's going to go down, do this, don't do that. Here's how often you need to take it to the mechanic, all of that stuff. So it's a great metaphor. Yeah, you can find me over at loveyourwoo.com, WOO for woo, as well as Instagram, Love Your Woo. I've had people ask me, like, what does Love Your Woo mean? Is a woo like a lady part, or like, what is that? I'm like, no, it's like the woo woo it's meant to be a joke. So, or like a just kind of funny play on that. I work a lot with women in business, and men and women in business, entrepreneurs who really want to create their business from a deeply heart-centered place. And so I tend to work with a lot of spiritual entrepreneurs who want to make sure that their business flows and feels really good for them, as opposed to trying to create a business that is based off of this sort of rule book for how we're supposed to put our businesses out into the world. So I have masterminds and retreats and different things like that are, we're going to ditch the old way of marketing. We're going to ditch the old way of messaging and really truly put something out there from a heart-centered place. So,
right. Okay. Yeah. I love that. But people that are just curious about their human design too, could maybe reach out to you too. Right.
Yeah. I have a person that does general human design readings that I work with, so I can connect them with that.
Get them to the right people. Awesome.
Yeah.
So Jess, tell me what nourishes your soul. So you talked a little bit about connecting with your people, but what else feels really nourishing to your soul?
The beach.
Yeah. So you have to come. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
I was going to say, where are you located?
Yeah, that's my backyard.
Amazing.
Yeah. So across the street is the beach. So
amazing.
I'm in Florida. Where are you?
Florida.
Oh, well, that's funny.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know where you were these days.
I didn't know where you were either, but I was like, that picture inspired me. I'm like, the beach is my nourishment place. So I love that.
Yeah. So are you close to the beach?
I am. Okay. Yeah. I'm in the Sarasota area.
I'm in Reddington Shores.
So oh my God. Crazy.
Probably not even an hour from you.
Wow. Okay. Well, we're going to have to meet for lunch.
We're going to have to meet. Yeah. I'm super excited about that. Yes. Amazing. So the beach is your place.
It's my place.
I love that. Yeah. Well, I've loved talking to you. We could probably talk for hours more about lots of things. Because I had other things on my notes, but we'll do it another time. We'll just do another one. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you so much.